Hey everybody, welcome back to Wing Wednesdays. I'm Tucker here with Mr. Jeff, and today we're going to talk to you about two new Appletree models, give you a little bit of a review, maybe a little comparison or some application, we'll say, how we might use each one in our own quivers, to give you guys some guidance on maybe which one would be right for you and how you might use those or why you might use those. And we'll start with the kind of go-to, the bread and butter of the lineup for 2024 here and probably beyond. We've got the Appleslice V3 from Appletree. These boards have been some of our favorites in the shop for the construction, but also just the thoughtful design. Sizing is always really on point.
They stick out.
Quality stuff, and they do things a little bit differently than some other brands, which is cool. It's fresh. Something new to try, and this board is no exception. It's phenomenal. I would say they've really modernized the dimensions and shape, and that's what we're going to talk about today.
Yeah, kind of be maybe your one board quiver.
If you choose the right size, certainly.
Yeah.
And we'll get into that as well in a moment. What we have here and what we've been testing is the 60 liter. Again, if you aren't familiar with us, I'm Tucker, I'm 200 pounds. Mr. Jeff, you're what, 170?
170, 175, yeah.
Yep. So this is not really a one size for us here where we live. We get some lighter winds. So ideally, we probably want to size up for this as a one board quiver, but as a higher wind board, this is a great size, depending on what you're doing. The dimensions on this one, 5.0 by 21.5 by 3, 60 liters. So as compared to previous year models, if you're familiar with those, we're getting a little longer, a little narrower, and that is really a trend across the industry, and it's something that we've been a huge fan of for quite a while now.
Big time. It's kind of that hybrid approach. It's not short, not the real long downwind, but kind of in the middle.
It's been surfified.
Yep, and something to keep in mind when you start to get to the longer design in a board, you do get stability from front to back, which we can go over later why that's important. So despite it being lower volume compared to some other 60 liter boards, there can be some benefits of stability.
Yeah, and let's go there. We're kind of on the topic.
Yeah, kind of just drove right into it.
My 2 cents on it is ease of use comes from length. A lot of that is because the sweet spot on the board gets larger with a longer board. It's more stable front to back, which is the direction it travels. Side to side stability, you get more of that from the foil, you get more of that from leaning on the wing, and also your body is built to adapt side to side a lot easier than front to back, especially while you're kneeling. So it's just easier to balance side to side. We're used to doing that, especially in board sports. So having extra length, where most people start knees forward, not Mr. Jeff, but most people start knees forward, so that side to side is a bit more adaptable, a bit easier, and then again that additional stability from the foil, and obviously the side to side is really leveled up in terms of stability once you start moving. Once you gain some momentum, that really stabilizes the entire board side to side as well. So and you can really pull that in.
And that's the key with this board. We'll get up to speed. Because you want that added stability from front to back, generally you're going to be riding a mid to higher aspect foil with this board.
Yeah.
And because of that, when you're in very wavy, undulating conditions on the surface, you want to get that board speed, keep that board flat to get up on those mid to higher aspect foils, and that's where this board is helpful.
Absolutely.
You have that extra stability and length, so that board won't submarine, and you don't have that, like you said, that back to forward instability. It actually is stabilized once it gets up to speed to rise.
Exactly. Long and narrow is sleeker, it's faster. Short and fat is draggy, you're pushing a lot more water. You also have a slower terminal velocity, which just means that it can't reach a certain speed. So if you have a smaller high aspect foil, something without a low speed lift, you might never reach that speed unless you get the board to release off the water, and then you can accelerate, and then that really just makes the technique, it makes you have to be a lot more powered to get a foil working like that. And then additionally on efficiency, we're kind of there. Look at this board from forward, about halfway forward to the nose. You can tell this is quite a low entry rocker. It is a hole in the nose here. Got a little bit of influence from their Skipper series, where this portion of the nose is actually just a tad bit higher than the rocker line actually, and what that does is it just keeps that hull in contact and really guides the flow of the board so you're not slapping as you're accelerating. When you start to really plane up and take off, this portion of the board's not going to be touching anymore, and then you really have a really fast profile through here. You'll see with the chimes on the rail, it's almost straight back here, so there's no outline adding drag. Very flat tail rocker here with a very clean release off the tail. That all just means it's going to accelerate and release off the water really cleanly, really quickly.
And it's called Appleslice.
That's right. Did I call it
Slice.
something else?
No, you didn't.
Okay.
But
Slices through the water, yeah.
Slices through the water.
Makes sense for sure.
Yeah.
And the big change again this year is the dimensions going a little longer, a little narrower, a little surfier shape, and then adding a bit more hole in the nose here, which really does make it a lot smoother ride. It's something you don't really realize till you start to think about it and look for it. You don't notice it because it's not bothering you. You know, you don't get that slappy, and it's so smooth when you touch down at speed. It continues. It doesn't go and get the brakes put on.
There's no shovel on the front of this like some of the shorter boards. It disperses the water real well. It gives you that nice release to take back off again. And you know, something that I mentioned earlier in the video when we first got started is kind of potentially that one board quiver, so to speak, because of the range that you can get out of this board with the added length for stability to get up to speed on those mid to higher aspect foils, even in the lighter winds. But obviously based on your size, with a 60 liter, I would probably size up. I could probably make this as a one board quiver at 60. It'd be a little on the low side for me at 175 pounds. Maybe we want to size up a size over what I'd normally ride.
Yeah, depends how low you want to go. If I live somewhere that was really windy, like Maui, Hood River, or if I was always traveling places where 60's plenty. I can get this working down to maybe 13, 14 with the right wing and foil. So it's not an issue, but for me at 200 pounds, it's a sinker for sure. If I'm not moving, I'll sink this thing up to my waist. So there's not a lot of volume here, but still very efficient, so you can kind of make it work.
Once it gets moving, very, very stable.
Going to the deck here, we do have a bit of a concave deck here. It is flat through most of the standing area, so it's really intuitive. You feel locked in and comfortable. It's not like you're sitting in the middle of this deep dish deck. It's pretty flat through the middle, so still very intuitive. It doesn't feel like it's overly responsive like you can sometimes get if there's too much concave here.
I would agree.
But then also it ramps up towards the edge, so you can get a little bit leverage into the foil on a wider foil if you want it, but also you can kind of index your feet and know where you're at on the deck without looking down. So that's really great. You'll notice we have a little bit of a bulb here in the nose that keeps the nose high when you're knee starting. Definitely helps if you have waves crashing over you and whatnot, just to keep the nose resurfacing nose first so that you're not purling that nose when you're trying to take off in the waves.
And those of you that maybe have had Appletree boards before, they have, I think in the last year and a half or 2 years, changed their padding, a little bit more grip to it. I feel this one's a good balance of just enough grip, but not overly grippy.
Yeah, corduroy kind of diamond traction.
Yep.
No need to wax this one.
Nope.
With their previous pad,
Yeah,
it was a little thinner and just
wax.
corduroy. Yeah, they didn't have a lot of texture, so a little wax would go a long way with that one, but I really don't find the need for it here. In terms of strap layout, orientation here, we've got a number of good options. You can see I'm using kind of a directional strap layout here, but I could easily move that over and make a V-strap here or two individual single front straps. We've also got more of a center line strap here if you like that. What we don't have is a dead center strap or a middle position here for a dedicated V-strap. So if it's a single bolt here, you can't really do that here unless it's offset to one side. So that's something to know. If you want to do a V-style setup, it's usually best to have two individual straps on these boards. Additionally, in the back, something that's rather unusual but we really like, we have offset back foot strap as well if you're riding directional. If you have a setup that you like where you're a little bit more offset, you can definitely go there.
And I would advocate for straps, obviously not for, you don't need them if you're just ripping around.
Yeah, I've ridden this board a couple times without straps.
Yep.
It surfed great.
Yep.
I added straps just to kind of test it for freestyle and also to give you a little bit more control when you're just taking off and some swell and stuff.
Yeah.
But
We do get some questions about the little half hook at the back here. Not everyone rides that.
Yeah, not many people are riding this style, but I find it works
You like
great.
to slide back there, so when you jump,
Yep.
and then it gives you the freedom to move your forward a little bit if you need to adjust without it being in the way.
Yep.
And again, you know, we get phone calls about when you first get in the sport, should I have straps? And we advise against that. They can get in your way and actually hold you back. But obviously, if you're starting to look into a board like this design, straps may be your next progression.
Yeah.
If you want to feel locked in a little bit, maybe on a big swell or big waves, or when you're getting jumping, you know.
Yeah, it gives you good
straps.
leverage or jumping. Do want to make sure you're able to get out of the straps easily. Don't want to ride too big of boards with straps. This isn't a strap video, so we won't go into it too much here, but this board jumps great as well. It is more of positioned as their surf and free ride board in their lineup. But I would say if you're into freestyle, but also into those other categories, this would be a really solid choice. Versus the Jazz, I would say you can ride it a little smaller as long as you have a decent sized wing to kind of take off after you land. Obviously the Jazz has a bit more volume for a similar length. So when you land on more volume, you're gonna have an easier time surfacing, but those are the people that are really into that. Tends not to be an issue once you kind of get past that. But
And what I like about this board, just to restate, is its hybrid approach. I think it's a board that, you know, if you wanted one board in your quiver to charge on waves, use ride in a variety of wind ranges, you would want to size up a little bit, but this board in its shape and design could serve that purpose where you don't need a downwind board and another, you know, charger board we may call it, but just have one board.
One board quiver, a travel quiver, definitely good, especially, you know, if you're a newer rider, we'll say intermediate or below, you can kind of just get a bigger size. It's going to work great for everything. It's just universal performance. If you're a more advanced rider, you can size down a little bit. You might lose a little bit of low end, but you know, a lot of times more experienced riders aren't going out there slogging when it's 9 knots anyway. Or if they are, they already have a bigger, you know, board that they already ride. So for you, what size would you choose for a one board quiver? And what do you think would be your favorite size in the lineup?
70 liter.
Okay.
For sure, hands down. And I think I could push that to the lower side of the wind window because of its length and its shape. So that would be mine.
Yeah. I love the 60, but I do lose a lot of low end, so I would have to go 70, maybe even 80 liters if I was kind of a fair weather rider here in Michigan. When it's warm, we tend not to have as much wind. So if I was a fair weather rider, I didn't go out when it was cold, I would say I'd probably go 80 because a little bit of extra volume is not going to hurt you. And the shape isn't overly wide, so you can still really rip it around. And you know, the extra volume's not going to hurt you in any way.
It doesn't feel as big when you're up and riding it. It may not feel like other 70 or 80 liter boards. I think it's weighted well. You touched on that. It feels, you know, it's got the performance that you would expect and want in a board of this design.
Yeah. So a little bit of extra bonus here. We've loved the Omen Flux. Part of the reason I ordered this in the 60 was to compare directly with the Omen 60.
It's a different shape, design.
Totally different
but
shape.
But a similar approach.
Yeah, similar idea, but a little different execution. I think there's going to be a lot of people waffling between those two boards because of how similar they are and the same construction.
Made in the same factory.
Same factory. What would you say 60 versus 60 for you?
I would say, based on my experience, this may seem to have a little more stability than the Omen Flux.
In which way?
I would say, I'm going to say even front to back, side to side. It just felt, for some reason, this one felt a little bit more like a traditional stability of the board that I learned on, or even my next board down.
Yeah.
That's me, though.
Yeah, gotcha. For me, it was, I wanted to size up a little bit on this board.
I would agree with that.
It's a little shorter than the Flux. It's a little narrower with respect to the planeability. So the physical width is wider, but if you look at where the chimes end, where that's planing up and how steep these are, you know, the working surface area at the bottom of the board is a little narrower. So for me, what I realized is I want this board in a 70 if I was comparing it to the Omen 60 in terms of just how it feels and how it planes up. 60 versus 60, I can get this going in just as light of wind as the Omen, but it is a little bit harder because of the shorter length for me and just the bottom shape.
It's a different experience, how I'm experiencing you. That's
yeah, they're similar.
Rider, but they are similar. And weight, we have a little difference in our weight, but.
Right, yeah, for me they're both sinkers. I need the extra length of the Omen. Sometimes it's just a little bit easier to get planed up.
And some of the Omen could have been maybe more my cerebral thought process on it, just by the way it looked and how it was tapered, my thought process with it, and stability and shape, but yeah.
But both phenomenal boards. Can't say enough about the Appletree construction. It's tough. We can ding this, continue riding it. You know, you do want to fix it when you can, but you don't need to have a hernia out there on the water, trying to swim it in above your head or something. Keep it out of the water and not get suck up water like a sponge. This is high density closed cell foam. So when you ding it, it's no stress. You can fix it on your own time and not worry about it. So if you're on a trip, you know, you don't need to worry about trying to find resin or find somebody to repair it for you. And it's not going to pick up weight and degrade over time. EPS is a great lightweight core that most brands are using, but it does degrade quickly over time, especially once it gets moist, once it gets wet. It just kind of.
They have good.
So it has a lifespan, whereas this is more of a poly surfboard, so to speak. You can hand this down to your grandkids someday. Great grandkids, maybe.
Maybe a little stretch. A little bit of a stretch.
But
a little bit of a stretch. But yeah.
If you take care of it, it's gonna last a long time.
Well, and it comes from a factory where they have control of their, you know, the quality of what they're producing, and I mean, the fit and finish of it, you know, it's a good board for its price point too.
It is, yeah, and we should mention that Appletree is based in the Netherlands. Their factory is in Portugal. So these are riders, building boards for riders, which is cool. Their own construction with the high density closed cell foam, vacuum, infusion technology, 100% carbon. Don't need a vent on these, don't need to stress about them flying.
And you can get custom colors on these as well, right?
We can, yeah. If you want a custom color, reach out to us. We can get you set up. Obviously, there's a bit of a delay there because they have to make it. Or you can just grab one fresh black carbon clear color from the shop here and go to town yourself, or maybe you know an artist who can make it their own. And nice thing about that is you get sick of the graphic, you can just wash it off, sand it off, and start over again.
But when you think of the black and the carbon, this is kind of like their trademark.
Yeah, you want to see the quality. You can see the quality carbon in this, and you know, it really looks great. So on to the next. What's the next one here in the lineup?
Here we roll.
This will even seem kind of similar looking, other than you mentioned the custom graphic. This one does have a custom resin swirl graphic on it, which is pretty cool. This one is the Appletree Skipper Prone Downwind.
Keyword prone, but
so that's a mouthful. But the idea behind this board is to prone paddle into waves. The shape is going to get you into waves sooner, easier with more paddle speed, with the idea that you're going to downwind it. I'm not sure that a lot of people necessarily are going to use the shape for that, but it is very capable and good for that usage.
Which would take a little bit of skill.
Yeah, it does.
The board isn't going to make up for that lack of skill, but it's certainly going to help.
But I would say, you know, if you're new to prone foiling and you're a surfer, this is a board that a newer rider would love. It paddles fast. It's got a lot of length and stability, which gives you a lot of forgiveness if you're trying to learn prone foiling. But also, this board has kind of multiple purposes. This is one of the jack knives, so to speak, in their Swiss Army knife, I should say, in their lineup.
Which we are starting to get a lot of calls about customers that want to get into prone surfing, but also may want to use it for potentially winging.
Yeah, winging or foil
crossover.
drive.
Yep, foil drive or crossover.
Yep.
So
or even wake. I mean, honestly, you could wake this board. And
the dimensions we're looking at here are 5'9" by 18, 4.1 the width with 50. Is that a 7 liter?
57 liters on this guy. So it's fairly low volume for guys like us for winging, but the length and the efficiency of the shape and the width really makes up for that. It's not a light wind option. If this was, you know, 20, 30 liters more, it would be phenomenal for light wind. But what this board does, we found, is it gives you the efficiency and speed on the water to really get small foils going. So normally you really need a lot of wind and lift from the wing to get a small racy foil going, because you can't reach those lifting speeds while the board's on the water. So you kind of got to get them up and skip them and get them to accelerate off the water, and then you can take off, but it requires a lot of lift and power from the wing. What this shape does is it really cuts through the water like a downwind board. Very low drag, as you can see here, and that allows you to reach those speeds on the water for a really easy, just accelerate, 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 lift off, but also lets you ride those foils in lighter winds. Not to say that you're going to be out there in 8 knots with those foils in this board, because it's still pretty low volume. But as soon as you can ride a normal board, you can usually ride this board with a smaller foil. And we did that the other day, actually. I was riding the 980S from Code with the 60-liter Slice V3 we were just talking about. And I was just making that work. It was pretty light. I was on a 5 meter that didn't really have a lot of pumping power, and could make that work pretty easily. But there were times when it would lull and it would be difficult. But this one, that I sized down to a 770R, which is a lot smaller and a lot thinner profile, really needs quite a bit of speed for liftoff. And this board would get it there in that same wind, same wing, so everything else being the same. This one allowed me to ride those faster foils and really get out there and rip around with some speed.
This size, though, would definitely take a rider that's more intermediate and above.
Certainly.
I mean, because it's 57 liter despite its length. And then remind our customers, what is the sizes that the Skipper comes in? Do we know those off the top of our heads?
I forget off the top of my head. I think the next size down is around 50 liters, and then it drops down to like 40.
40. So really, initially, prone focus.
Sizes.
Yeah, prone focus. But for those of us that are more intermediate to advanced riders in winging, can use this.
Yeah, and intermediate plus foil drive as well.
And for a lot of our customers, this shape may look like a light wind, downwind board, but it's a mini version. That's why you can use it for prone. But again, looking at the multiple uses of it, it can be used for the winging. I would say initially, and you've said it well, a little more wind. I mean, obviously, when we talk about wind and board sizes, skill can make up for that too, what skill set you have. But generally speaking, you're going to need to be a little more powered if you're going to use it as a prone and then go to use it as a wing board.
Right. So on the deck here, flat deck, no inserts. This is a super light board. It's meant to be just quick, hard, light. It's not really meant for jumping or anything like that. It's not really initially designed for winging, really, so it doesn't have any of those features. But just useful shape, clean deck. But one benefit you get with this on the foil drive specifically, I think this is going to be a very popular model for the foil drivers, is number one, you get the length. So with foil drive, length is important because you need that nose to plane up. You need that board to get moving on the water so that you can get to your feet and then lift off on the foil. If your board's too short, you're always riding a wheelie or purling the nose. You're never getting up to speed, especially if you're in chop.
You're snow
bouncing off
the
that,
water.
you're just
pushing.
So this board being a little longer, a little narrower, really amps up the efficiency, makes it easier to take off on smaller foils with the foil drive, similarly to winging. But then also you have that extra board so you can get your chest up here. Those of you that foil drive already know this.
You got to shift.
You really got to shift your body weight forward so you don't wheelie up, because you have so much thrust from that motor. So that's that. This is the Appletree Prone. As compared to the Skipper, how do you choose between? I think for 99% of the people, the easy choice is the Skipper.
Yep.
If you're into foil drive, if you're into riding smaller, faster foils in conditions that can be hard to get going, this has some unique benefits. Or if you're just somebody that really enjoys prone foiling and wants a crossover into their wingboard, this is a great choice for that as well.
That's where this would be the fit.
But as you mentioned, 57 liters is the largest one they make in this at the moment. I would love to see some larger sizes, but at some point you can transition to the downwind Skipper as well.
Get more in the downwind sizes.
85, 89 liter sizes there starting. So there's a bit of a gap, but you can jump right up into there pretty easy.
Well, in terms that we use, downwind is a general term we use a lot, but in winging, we're starting to use light wind board too.
Right.
And this size, if they got too much bigger in this size, then you're breaching into the downwind light wind boards that are out there.
Right.
So this kind of fits a little bit just below into that prone area, not going to the full-on light wind winging side of things. So
Yeah, yeah.
or
So
sup paddling, which we haven't talked about, but the sup foiling, this
Right.
would be too small.
yeah, so
Potentially, unless you had foil drive on it,
yeah,
might.
this one's a little bit more niche than
Yeah, yeah.
the Skipper. Probably not going to sell anywhere near as many of these, but for those people that are looking for this kind of board, it's here. So that's cool that Appletree are able to be adaptable, to be so forward thinking and designing that they can pop these kinds of boards out, even if they aren't selling 1,000 of them, which is great.
You know, I get on the phone, phone calls, people interested in the Appletree boards, and if we don't have them in stock, how long does it take to get them, or if they want, order them? What's that process look like?
Well, most of the time we have them in stock. It's stuff we love, so it's something we try to keep in stock. Depending on the time of the year and what the factory is doing is going to determine how long it is for a custom or for an unavailable board to show up. If we don't have one in stock, there's a good chance we already have one in orders, so it shouldn't be too long. In fact, sometimes we can even ship directly from their factory to a customer.
Yeah.
If that happens, it's like 10 days. It's no big deal to get a board to a customer. But if it's just totally out of production, none planned, none scheduled, they're still pretty fast, usually like 8 to 10 weeks. If they don't even have any plans to build one, to bam, board is done, ready to ship. So as compared to most brands and factories out there, that's in a whole nother league of being able to get you what you need.
Customer service, so good.
Yeah.
I think good wrap there. I think we covered them quite well and who they be for. And again, I think Appletree's done a nice job just with their marketing, the colors, the shit, what they've, that black. Everyone knows these are Appletrees. They kind of stand out a little bit in their shape, and they're pushing the envelope with shape and performance to, have success on the water.
Yeah, they're doing things differently. Definitely jumping outside of the box as far as wind sports brands are concerned, and how they've operated and how they've built boards for a long time.
They're kind of that leading edge of that.
So that's exciting.
And you'll see more of this kind of in the other brands too.
Yeah, and more brands are using the Appletree factory, Appletree construction, so it's by no means only in the Appletree boards. You can also find it in the Omen. You can find it in the Ozone boards that we now carry. So if you like some of those shapes, but like the Appletree construction, you can definitely do that. And I expect that we'll see more brands producing their premier boards in the Appletree factory here at some point in the future. So
yeah, good.
Right on. Well, that was kind of a quick rundown on these. Little semi-informal rundown review-ish. But yeah, these are some fun boards available here at our shop. And if you have any other questions, you can drop in the comment section below. You can call the shop, talk to one of us, of course. Send us an email, a chat response, whatever's good for you, and we'll get you taken care of.